Welcome, listeners and viewers. This is another episode of Taking Chances podcast. It's your lovely host, Justin.
And Burnett.
And Q.
All right, guys. So, in this episode, we're going to kind of flip the script a little bit. So, my two fellow co-hosts have told me that there is a special topic that they have in mind for this episode today. So, can you share with the viewers what we have in mind for this one?
Yeah, we definitely can. I'm gonna let Burnett start it off, and then I'm gonna give the reason of how it came about.
So today's episode is titled "A Really Fun Episode," and it's interesting how it came about. But we wanted to take today to kind of just like talk about a really important topic. And I do believe that today's topic will be extremely enlightening and informative, but Quentin will be able to let you guys know how it came about.
All right, so this topic came about and we titled it A Really Fun Episode based off of the conversations that I've had with other straight males who did not understand the gay black man's plight. They felt that because they were gay black men, that their views and their fight for, equality and to be equal was not the same as a regular straight black man's plight. So they felt because that they're not backing us, that they're against us. So I had to have, that conversation with them and, just pretty much enlighten them and tell them, hey, they have it worse than we do. And that's only based off of, the conversation that I've had with you, Justin, and, a couple of other, gay black men that's been in that community, to know that you guys have it worse because you get it from the straight males, you get it from, the gay white men. And it's terrible because it seems, and I was telling Burnett this before, that in the rank of like the totem pole, you have like white male, then you have like white woman, white female, then you have black male, black woman, gay black male. And that's kind of messed up to have you at the bottom, but you are seen less than even a woman, and we all are trying to fight for this equality. So that's the reason why we came up with this topic to talk about it. Now, the title of A Very Fun Episode came about when, one of my friends said, that I wanted on here to be, a co-host to, have them discuss so we can see it from a different point of view, because not everybody has my point of view. They want to be on a fun episode. So we just titled this episode A Very Fun Episode.
Bravo. We love a bit of factual shade. I love it.
So, of course, with this being a really fun episode, it was only appropriate that we would invite someone who is really fun and who personally I think will be able to bring a lot of insight to this really important topic. So today we have as a guest Zaire, also known as Q, another Q. We have Zaire coming on to speak with us today. Zaire was born and raised in California. He has an eye for fashion and a great sense of humor. He also is a very creative soul, and when he's not creating content, you can find him traveling the world. And I also want to add that he's a really good dancer, which I've seen, so I just want to add that. So we'll bring in Zaire so that he can join us in this conversation. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. How y'all doing? Thank you so much.
Great to have you. I'm so happy to have you. And just so you guys know, I actually met Zaire through one of my close friends, Bevan, which is one of Zaire's like best friends. And I would always hear Bevan talking about Zaire, like, oh, my friend Q, we go this place, we go that place. I mean, they travel the world together. And I finally got the privilege to meet him last year. And I was like, Bevan, why didn't we meet sooner? Like,
right?
I'm like, this guy is so funny. Like, I love him. His energy is amazing and just really insightful. Like, I'm excited to have him. And I'm excited to have you here today. So thank you
I'm
for
excited to be a part of this topic. It's very interesting.
Yes.
I'm happy to have reinforcements on this one.
Exactly. So just before we begin, I just wanted to briefly just commend you all being Black men all across the board, like with no regard to your sexual identity or preference, anything like that. I just think that as Black men living in America, that is something that should be acknowledged, and understanding the struggle that comes with being a Black man. So from a Black woman to these 3 Black men on the call, and to any Black man that's listening, I just want to say that you are loved, you're valued, you are appreciated, and that you don't have to fit into a monolithic idea of what that looks like. Like, you can be who you are, unapologetically be who you are, and that's fine. So I just wanted to start the call off that way and kind of like just shout y'all out.
Well, thank you.
Y'all are welcome. So I'm going to go ahead and start my first question. It's a good question. But I don't know who's going to answer it first. I'm interested to see who will answer it first. What does being Black and proud mean to you?
I guess I'll take this one and start the conversation off. So for me, I think, what you said about Black men really kind of is a good start to that question. I think, there's so much work to involve to oppress and try to box the Black man into a certain box. There's Black people in general. And, people often find it hard to box Black people because there's such a rich history and rich culture and just beauty within Black people. So I think that for an entire country or society to do whatever they possibly can to try to oppress us as people, I think, there's power in that, and there's just strength in being Black. So for me, and for all the people that's come before me to give me the voice, the freedoms, and the foundations to be me, I just think there's power and there's beauty in it. And like for me, like I wouldn't choose to be any other race but Black because we're the best.
Mm-hmm.
For me personally, being Black and proud would have to just, in itself, it's said. I'm proud to be Black. If you look at our history and what we contribute on this earth, I think a lot of from the laws and dances, creativity, it's off our backs, whether you like to admit it or not. And so you cannot help but be proud of that, because when you look at it, you're like, you wouldn't have half the stuff you have this day if it wasn't for Black people. Mm-hmm. So you cannot help but not be proud of that, whether the world wants to admit it or not. From the lips to the hairstyles to your dance room to your fashion, it's all us.
Mm-hmm.
For me, being proud and Black, I look at it a different way. I would say it's more of we were the first, we were the creation, and everything stems off of that. I take it as far as like when you have like 2 colors, you have white and black. You can't turn black into white, but you could turn white into black. Mm-hmm. If that makes sense. So
Absolutely.
Because black is such a dominant color, you can't turn anything else into black. You can't turn anything else. You can't turn black into anything else. Let me get it correct. You can't turn anything else into. I messed it up now.
No. You had it right the first. You had it right the first time. You had it
right. Yeah. White derives from black. That's
right.
Essentially how you get white. It derives from
everything. Everything derives from that one dominant color. So we are the dominant people, and it's the fact that we are that dominant that people are afraid, and that they use those things in the system to oppress Black people because they don't want us to acknowledge our real power. So to be Black and proud is just to be able to say, even when you put us in situations that are used to destroy us, we still can overcome them. We still have that perseverance. We still have that drive, that passion, because if it wasn't for Black people, we wouldn't be sitting here. Black people have created everything. Anything and everything started from a Black person. Mm-hmm. So that, for me, that's to be proud, because they couldn't do it. they still trying to figure out how they built the pyramids with how no ramps, no nothing, but you built them.
Let them tell that they built the pyramids, but we won't get into that. It's a whole different conversation.
Exactly. but it's just stuff like that. Like, they have done feats that people still trying to figure out to this day. So to be Black and proud just means that, you know, for me, it's like, it's the world. Like, that's the world. It's nothing but the world, because nothing else would exist without it.
Mm-hmm. But I think it's even the phrase itself. I mean, when people, when Black people first conned that phrase, there were white people telling Black people, they were trying to oppress Black people, even saying, those few short words.
Right.
So I think the fact that those words in itself, the fact that it embodies our Black strength, I mean, it speaks for itself in a way.
Carries volume.
Okay, so I'm going to bring a little history for my next question. If you're familiar with this character, and maybe I should have, I guess we could probably like add a photo for those who aren't familiar, but Bayard Rustin was a gay civil rights leader, and he was a close advisor to MLK Jr., and he helped organize the March on Washington in 1963. And even A. Philip Randolph coined him as Mr. March on Washington. But he was often described as being in the shadows. And this wasn't because he was a closeted gay Black man or anything like that, but he was described as being in the shadows because of the fact that he didn't hide who he was. In fact, in 1953, he was arrested after he was found having sex with two men in a parked car in California. And he served 50 days in Los Angeles County Jail and had to register as a sex offender before returning to his home state in New York. Now, in 2020, the governor of California, Gavin Newsom, pardoned him posthumously. How do you say that? Posthumously?
Posthumously.
Yeah. He pardoned him for the arrest and noted how LGBTQT plus people were unjustly punished for their sexuality by U.S. law enforcement at the time. So I know that's a lot to take in, so I'll let y'all, bask in that real quick. But what dangers do you think are presented when a Black gay man unapologetically lives in their truth? And with considering the fact of what I just mentioned with Bayard Rustin and why a lot of people don't even know who he is, even though when you look at a lot of pictures with MLK, you will see him like in the background a little bit. But what dangers do you think are presented when a Black gay man unapologetically lives in their truth, and how does that relate to today?
I mean, it's still going on today. This simple dangers is actually not being taken seriously. It's not being seen. It's not being heard. It is being chased by your own community and beaten up just because of who you choose to love. I mean, the whole social media is riddled with that, of people committing suicide simply of being who they are unapologetically.
Mm-hmm.
I think something that it's still something that's not extremely talked about when it comes to organized movement, that a lot of the organized movement are by people from LGBT communities that a lot of heterosexual men do not acknowledge, are not aware of. They're not aware of James Baldwin and all those people who are LGBT who advocated for you to even walk down the street to this day. And I just find that it irritates, because when you're pulled over by a police officer or you encounter someone who's racist, they don't ask you, well, are you Black and gay? They see you as simply, I'm going to say, a Black man. That's what they see. And so when you have to go ahead and walk down the streets and get it from the hoods or whatever, and then cross into the suburbs and get it from the whites, you're like, where am I safe at?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think I 100% agree with Zaire's statements. I think the interesting thing with Bayard Rustin is, people they don't give credit to him for being a pioneer in a lot of the rights that they have today. There's people that choose to separate us from Black men just because of what we choose to do, who we choose to love. But in reality, being Black is still a part of my identity. But because of, that aspect of my identity, it causes us to, be denied certain opportunities, certain jobs, certain spaces to be able to have voices in. So I definitely think that it's definitely still a big factor, because this is something that ultimately causes people not to be open with who they are. And that's also a trauma that we have to face within our own community. Whereas not only that we have to struggle with, being Black men first and foremost, we have to struggle with, our sexuality. We have to struggle with being seen, as equals within the public spaces, also within our own communities, and then more importantly within ourselves.
Mm-hmm. And I was reading an article that actually someone described that intersectionality that you're describing. So being Black, being gay, being a male, it's almost like you're a subset of another group. Like that's how the African American community has created this now. Okay, yeah, you're Black. Okay, you're a man, but now it's a subset. It's literally another carving of a group that the Black and the heterosexuals don't identify with, because now you've added on that extra layer. So my question for you guys is, do you feel that, well, I mean, you spoke to it a little bit, Justin, in terms of the acceptance and not getting that, but what do you have to say to those heterosexual Black men, in terms of fostering those relationships? Or like, how can they be more supportive, or how can they be an ally essentially with respect to the LGBTQ community?
You can stop by, from my opinion, you can stop by thinking when you find out that I'm gay, that I desire you. Like, I think
yes.
It's so find out that you are into me. Do you find me attractive? Are you looking at my butt? I'm like, there are so many variables that go into if I find you attractive or not. First of all, let's start with that. Let's start actually talking to me. And it seems like things turn left when I mention my orientation. But before that, you have no problem talking to me about who you are and about your problems. I'm like, keep that same energy, because who I choose to sleep with does not define me as a person. It's just who I choose to lay down next to.
Right.
I think that's one thing, and let go of the stereotypes that because I am gay doesn't make me a punk. That is the most irritating things, that I can't do certain things, that I'm afraid to get dirty. I'm like, come on now.
Still throw hands.
Yeah, I choose not to do certain things just because that's just who I am.
Fun fact, they probably fight better than some straight men. Like most straight men.
Absolutely.
A lot of us do.
They fight better than straight men. Like, it's crazy.
We grow up fighting.
Tires.
It's crazy.
Literally and
figuratively. It's crazy. Like, yeah, they have hands. Don't play with them.
Absolutely. We have the best comebacks too sometimes. I mean, we grow up on a regular being pushed, teased, picked on, laughed about, mocked at. And so I think that you have to let that stuff go. I think at some point it would be nice to bridge the gap between heterosexual and homosexual, because those are all acts that we partake in.
Right.
Those are things that are unseen. But what is seen is the pigment, the melanin in my skin. But everything else, I'm like, those are acts. Like, those are non-existent in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else want to take?
I think for me, I feel like I'm a living, breathing truth of this is, first you have to look at me first and foremost as a Black man. Like, at the end of the day, no matter who I choose to sleep with, what I do, what I wear, whatnot, if me and you were gonna get pulled over and a cop wanted to shoot us, like, we're both getting treated the same. Police don't pull over based on sexuality. Police pulled over based off of who they think you are and their perception of you. And in that moment, my perception is the same perception as you, bruh. And it's like, I feel like, to me, it's bad enough that we face all these things, from the world already, but it's even worse that we face it from our fellow Black men. I mean, Quentin put it ever so beautifully that in the terms of hierarchy, it's like we're below our own people that should be supporting us first and foremost, people that should be respecting us and uplifting us, because, while we are free to be who we are, we're still uplifting our first identity as Black people.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's really powerful. Like, you guys hit it right on the head. Again, just emphasizing that you are still Black. Like, that is what is seen. The unseen almost is it's not irrelevant. Almost. It is irrelevant. It literally is irrelevant, and it's just it's so crazy. But I mean, I'm glad that we're talking about it, because I think that this will be a little bit helpful for people to kind of get an idea of, because what I've noticed is that oftentimes heterosexual Black men don't associate with homosexual Black men. So these conversations, they're not even able to get the insight, because the interactions that bromance, that they don't get to have that opportunity. And what's interesting is, and I'm not sure if you guys have noticed this as well, but as time has kind of went on, it seems almost like a lot of phrases, like even from like drag culture or like lingo used like amongst the gay community, it's being like shifted to mainstream culture. And you will find that heterosexual men are saying things like shade or it's giving, or, you know, certain terms. How do y'all feel like about that? Like, is it cultural appropriation at that point? Like,
yes, it is. Yes, it is. I went on a tangent about this. I find it so interesting, and I just find it it's almost a tad bit offensive, in my opinion, that you're comfortable, or whoever you're conversing with, your girlfriend or whoever that you got that lingo from or whatever you watch, and you're able to say shade, tea, because that's ballroom talk right there. That's old school ballroom talk right there, where we used to read and clock women all the time, baby. Okay, get into this tea right quick. You know, we used to go into like that. You know, we used to like, the girls are twirling right now. Come on now. And so when you hear guys talking about it's giving or shade or using that lingo, no ma'am, no Pam, it's, for me, my wig splits all the way back. I'm like, honey, tell me something. Are you giving something? What's going on, ma'am? I come this girl. Hello, niece. I was perfectly fine being this dude, but then you say that lingo, I'm like, hello, are we family? Because when being Black and gay, and it's like being Black, it's like being Black and gay and being Black. There's two things two roles I see. Being Black, you can be in a room, it can be a room full of other ethnicities or white people, and you see another Black person, telepathically, you like, if something goes down, we're in this together. It's the same thing when you're in a room and you're only gay person full of heterosexual men, especially heterosexual Black men, and you hear somebody say gay lingo, you're like, ooh, I got family up in here. I'm not by myself. My ears can go like, hey girl, hey niece, I see you, boo. Mm-hmm. I see you. We in this together. So when I hear the heterosexual community using that and they're Black, I'm confused. I'm like, is she family? Or is this just a new thing? We're once again a fad? Oh, okay. Got it. We're underpaid, we're not recognized, we're creative, we create all your content, and we're okay to use when it comes to, you know, lingo and all that, but we're not okay to talk to. So you can say it's giving in front of your straight homies and it's fine, but you can't talk to me because you assume that you talk to me or say hi to me or acknowledge my presence, they assume that you get down. I'm like, okay, that's how that works. Mm-hmm. It just offends me. I don't get it.
You know, I'm in the middle of this. I'm in the middle of this issue because, so on the offensive part of it is, you know, I feel like there was a time when we were looked at a certain way, or we were forced to be boxed in a certain way of how to say certain things because it wasn't the known culture and it wasn't, you know, broadly amongst people, and because of who we were. But then you have shows like The Real Housewives of Atlanta, who is the reason why most of these people are saying some of these reads and these shades. Like, I feel like if it wasn't for shows like that, people wouldn't be saying some of the things that they're saying or talking about some of the things they're talking about. And even with the way that they introduced people to those communities, the way they did it was truly cultural appropriation, because it didn't necessarily give credit where credit was due. And they use that culture to uplift them as women, when there are women who don't do their equal part to uplift, you know, people within our community as well. But on the opposite side of where I'm like, okay, I'm kind of for it, is, you know, I feel like it steps in the right direction for people to kind of be more open and accepting and appreciative of that culture in our culture, but it's like it's like being in the middle. It's like being in the middle of the fence because coming from a time where people made this wrong, and honestly, people kind of appropriating and celebrating it as if it's kind of like mocking in a way. Like it's a weird place. Like I have my friend Matthew's a straight male, and to hear him saying some of the things that that I would normally say, it's like like you sure you want to be saying that? Like, are you sure you want to be saying that? Like, are you just talking like this with me just because it's me, or do you actually say these things around, some of your other friends?
Well, with that, I would say being one of the straight males, they don't. Hey, they don't really. Because I wouldn't have known, when people get words and they appropriate words, they don't really know the origin and they don't know necessarily like where it came from. So a lot of the times when people use words, they hear it from women, and then they'll be like, oh, it's cool to say because a woman said it. They'll be like, some woman will say it to them, and then they'll use it. But like I said, I didn't know that it came from that you guys had started it until this conversation. So it's things like that, like the small things that people don't understand and know, because I don't use those words on a regular basis. I don't even use them at all, actually. But it's just a fact to know that you guys in that community created those words. And then it's like, yeah, but y'all would use it with y'all girls, and then they would use it. And then I think that's how it spreads. So it's just the fact of dudes probably don't, like straight males probably don't even know like the origin of those words and like the real meaning behind them. That's just like white people and nigga. They don't know well, no, let me stop that. They do know the origin. They still continue to use it. But I'm in this sense, they honestly probably don't know. They're ignorant to the fact that, it came from that community.
Well, so interestingly that you say, that most straight men wouldn't know the origins. But I have a question for the inverse of that. So when straight men use terms like that's gay or no homo, do you feel that straight men, this is for everyone, but do you guys feel that straight men are aware of how those comments are overtly offensive?
Oh, I'm so glad you said that, because here's my issue with that notion, right? It's okay for straight men to use that lingo to discuss something amongst the bros and it be acceptable and it's okay to talk about. But when used against us, it's used as derogatory. It's used to try to bring us down. It's used to threaten us. I never got this culture where it was okay to just, joke with the bros and pretty much say comments like that. But on the inverse, it's used to attack us. So I think there's like a weird toxic culture amongst straight men and how they use certain terminologies and justify it. Oh, he's just one of the bros, or he's one of the fam, and we're not like that. We can say those things because we're confident in our sexualities or whatnot. I never understood that.
For me, you said the no homo and stuff, but people normally
no homo and that's gay specifically. Those were the terms that used.
People normally, straight dudes normally use a no homo if they say something that's like pushing the boundary, and they like it's really getting close to that, but which is weird.
It very much is weird.
It's weird because if you can articulate and express how you feel, you don't need to use that no homo. But because of the people that you're around and I guess how people are raised, that's what they use to express, to be like, oh, well, I like that. And they'll be like, hey, yo, like they'll say some weird shit. And then they'll be like, oh, that's gay. So it's stuff like that, because the real term of that's gay is happy. Gay is happy. So I'm confused as to, how that got embedded into society, but that's a conversation for another time.
I had to really educate my friend about this, because he would say, oh, no homo after saying something. I'd be like, why do you have to say that like in front of me? Like I am all, in all intents and purposes, a homo. So what's the point of you saying this?
I'm all the way homo, so you don't have to.
But it's used for straight men. Like it. I think
Like-
for me personally, when straight men use it, it's the fact that because it's like a stigma around to show love to another straight black man showing love to another black man. Like that's the stigma. Like that's like unspoken rules in the black community, and that's why you don't hear a lot of dudes say I love you to another man, because they feel like that's stepping over the line, when in actuality you could sit there and say you love someone and it be platonic and not sexual in any way or form, shape or form. But because the way that people have been brought up, and how society and the whole black community has this stigma towards that the LGBTQ plus community, it's always something like, oh, if I say I love you to, that's like me saying I love you to Justin and Zaire, which is true. But someone else would take it as, oh, well, maybe he wants to like sleep with them, and then now it's like a whole situation. So it's stuff like that. That's what I would say.
I think when people say no homo, it's an excuse when they do something that is questionable in their community that they have to justify. Right. And I think that's dumb. I'm like, if your friends or your family are, you don't have to try to sweep it under the rug or try to cover it by saying no homo, bro. And it's like, no one cares. Yeah. Only person that cares is you. Mm-hmm. If you know you're not into men, then why do you have to say that?
You have to see, that's the other thing too. A lot of people are not comfortable in their own sexuality. And because they're uncomfortable, certain things like that, they'll say no homo to.
Well, you guys addressed the no homo, but none of you spoke to the that's gay. I actually am curious about your thoughts on that, because straight men do say, yo, bro, like that's gay, or nah, stop, that's gay. Like that's what they'll say. So like, what are your thoughts on that?
I don't get what they mean by that when they say that, like, bro, that's gay. I'm like, what's gay? I'm like, I don't get it. I'm not getting correlation. When you say, like, I used to be a bit perplexed when they say, nah, bro, that's gay. I'm like, what is that? What is gay about it? Like, make it make sense. I understand it's just an expression, but I'm like, why, out of all the things you could have said in the world, why that one? I don't understand it, to be honest.
And this is why, like I said, I wanted other people on here, because they'll be able to express that. So for it's gay, I feel like it's normally for situations like, if you, like I said, doing something that's like pushing a line. That's like you playing with one of your brothers or some shit, and y'all like doing it's very like borderline shit. So it's kind of tough to explain, because people use it for all types of different situations.
Okay, so let me help you out,
please,
because I have some examples. Like, because I think that what it honestly is showing is it's a contradiction.
Absolutely.
Example I'm going to show you guys. You're going to see a lot of straight men recently, in like recent years, have become more comfortable with expressing their feminine side. Meaning, you'll see them in the nail salons getting their toes done. You'll see them
like
in
that.
the nail.
That you're right.
You'll see them in the nail salons getting their nails done. Like, they're more comfortable now. A lot of straight men are more comfortable with expressing the feminine side of them. With that being said, it's like, okay, how is that so when there's still that overt offensive like remarks being used, or still the discrimination being still happening in their community, like the Black community?
You hit it on.
I mean, well, to answer your question, I mean, when you say give those examples, I think it's a whole different conversation right there in itself, because you have to define what's considered feminine and what's considered masculine. If you going to the salon getting your nails done, I don't want nobody with ugly feet. So we have men should upkeep, and I think that's a great thing that nowadays more guys are more comfortable and confident doing those things that's considered, I guess, gay. But to me, I view that's upkeep. You should want to, fix that unibrow right there. It's not attractive. You should want to make sure your toenails are actually not yellow and the dead skin is gone. That doesn't make you, homosexual. I think that the question is sometimes is that we have to start looking at what is considered masculine nowadays and what is considered feminine. I feel by default, if anybody, in which everybody came from their mother, I mean, I'm assuming you have one. I'm just assuming, you know, if you don't, please let me know. No offense. So therefore, by that, you should know a woman. So if you know a woman or any type of female in your life, you're going to pick up some feminine traits. I think it's just going to happen. Period, point blank. You're going to have some type of mannerism. Does not make you a homosexual. It just makes you human.
Right.
And what you said is a really good point, because the idea, the example I presented, by no means is that my personal view, but
right.
Society has placed these standards so that, yes, upkeep is a feminine thing. I didn't create that, but that's something
Correct.
that society has kind of attributed with women. Women tend to be the ones going to get their hair done, or, you know, like getting their eyebrows done, getting their nails done. So to see, if you go in a nail salon now, that it's just as much men in the nail salon waiting as much as women, it is a bit of a shift in culture and standards, because if we go back in history, that just wasn't the case. You weren't seeing men in the nail salons, and by no means does a man being in a nail salon make him homosexual, because more often than not, they could be heterosexual. You know, you don't know what their preference is by seeing them in the nail salon. But I have seen personally a shift of even heterosexual men taking care of themselves in that way more.
But like you said, it's the fact that that's more, upkeep is more of a feminine thing. And like, you could go back 2-3 generations and you'll never, none of them been in a nail salon. And I think that's where it came from. It came from like the older generation being like, hey, like, because if you go back 2-3 generations and be like, oh, I'm going to get my nails done as a dude, they'd be like, what the fuck is wrong with you? This is not what a man does. If all a man does is provide, he works and all that other stuff. Like, upkeep was not like on the forefront. But now, like I said, because people and dudes realize that women like a well-groomed men, they'll go get their nails done. They'll be like, I'm getting my feet done, I'm getting this done, because that's what their woman likes. So I feel like the more that it's pushed that certain things is attractive, they'll do it. And that at the end of the day is what it is. But the it's gay thing, like I said, that's like prime example in our group chat that we're both in, when Thing got his eyelashes done. He sat at the table and was like, yo, I'm batting my eyelash like a bad bitch. Like shit like that. Somebody would come behind and be like, hey, yo, that's gay. Like it's like, that's what they use it for. But it's like, which necessarily not isn't, which isn't out of the word that I want to use, which isn't bad that he wanted to get his eyelashes done, because they probably could have looked terrible. And he was like, I just want to get them fixed. So it's not, it's the way that people perceive things. Like, perception is key, and I think a lot of people's perception has to be changed.
So the kind of elephant in the room about that question is, a lot of it is attributed to toxic masculinity. And unfortunately, within Black men, this is like a real big issue. And I think that because people are starting to call the charge Black men to sort of address the toxic, masculine culture that they've started to breed within us. I mean, Black men are taught not to express themselves. They're taught not to be, well, not recently, but in the past, they were taught not to express themselves. They were taught that they can't do certain things because certain things are perceived as feminine traits. They were taught to not be able to look or perceive or do certain things. So there's a history of toxic culture to where a Black man sort of has to navigate while also navigating him as his own personality. And then when you throw in the mix a Black man navigating his sexuality and a toxic masculine culture, that's a lot. I feel like that's why these terminologies get thrown around so easily. I mean, even with the example of, the eyelashes, it's like, if I hear that, I'm like, dude, like, if you want to get your eyelashes done, to each his own, do your thing, bro. Like, that's good for you. Me personally, I want somebody that takes care of this stuff. I don't want no bum smelling like whatever the hell a cat dragged in with your toe. No, that ain't cute. I'm sure your girlfriend don't want it either. But you have women that also don't allow men to express that side of him. And I just feel like the reason why a lot of terminology gets thrown around is because there's a culture that's taught men to look at this and view it in a certain way. It's okay for you to say those certain things because that is the culture of you as a man.
And I feel like that's why they use those words, because it's outside of the culture that they're taught is what a man should be. So anything that's outside of that normalcy is automatically gay, soft, homo, stuff like that. So they have to be able, and I feel that people, our generation and younger, is like moving to change that, because it's okay to express your feelings. It's okay to do these things. Like, even to reference an episode we did before, mental health, like that's a big thing now, and discussing in that is expressing yourself. So I feel like a lot is changing, but it's going to be a long road, and it's going to be a tough road, because like you said, there's some things that is real toxic about it, and the only way that you'll know that it's toxic is if you have these conversations.
Yeah, and I think to your point, what you just said was really vital. Expression is key, but also not to judge, because on both sides of the conversation, like, there is ignorance on, both sides that need to be unpacked. Because I think if you take it back to just the overall group structure of being a man, yes, there are certain things that society places on you all, and it doesn't matter your sexual preference, but from young, you're taught, like, don't cry, like, don't show anybody that you're weak, like, you gotta be strong. Like, those are the societal things that you might hear from your family. Oh, why are you crying for? You a boy, you're not supposed to cry. Like, those type of things. Like, yeah. And so with that, like you said, if you maybe see, okay, fathers, grandfathers, uncles who don't go to the nail salon or don't really take care of themselves, they smell, like, have BO, like, I mean, stuff like that. Like, no one talks about it. It's an elephant in the room. But like Justin said, like, your girl probably don't want you to smell. Like, but historically, the upkeep or just these conversations is not really talked about, because what comes with expression comes judgment sometimes. And so that is the issue, that it seems like the divide is coming from a lot of, like, lack of understanding, ignorance, but also, like, the judgment as well.
And it's also lack of visibility too. I mean, just I feel like nowadays we're starting to see a lot of our culture, Zaire, really in the media, really in public spaces, really just being able to be out proud and loud. In the past, we didn't have those spaces to really have as much expression to say the things that we're saying now. And because now that, we have that expression, we have TV shows that kind of reflect our culture and our history. We have books and movies and spaces and political space to say certain things. It's like now you don't have a choice but to address certain things. But there's also, with having spaces, it's also addressing the history of what the space was without that visibility. And I feel like Black people, we have a real responsibility to really address that culture that we've created, essentially. It's sad that as Black people that we didn't necessarily create the space for, fellow Black LGBTQ people. In reality, they've gone through and encountered the same issues that we went through as well. Like, take Bayard Rustin, for example, all the work that he did with Martin Luther King. But for him to be labeled a sex offender for just simply engaging in who he was at the time, just like I'm sure Martin Luther King engaged with Coretta. We wouldn't have any other little kings if he didn't engage in Coretta the same way that Bayard Rustin chose to engage in his liberties and freedom. Yes. And it's the hypocrisy of that. It's like, I am a person, but because I'm this person, I'm looked at a certain way. My culture has to be, be made of as a joke, when in reality, our entirety, of our culture as Black people is already a joke. But now it's a joke to my own people as well.
Right. And to speak on that, and I was going to bring it up, but I'm glad you went back to the MLK thing and all that other, and, Rustin and all of that. I would say that for us as our generation growing up, it was beaten into our heads by the church too. Like, the church does have some role to play in this, because all of our grandparents probably would attend the church, and it was those grandparents that said, "Oh, being gay is not acceptable by God, and that
mind you,
that
the
even
church
in
folk be some of the most closetest people of all.
oh, absolutely, we know that, but that in itself, just to have that reinforcement after all of those years, and then to see something that comes different is like, that's out of your norm. And I would say a lot of the older generation is at fault because of that, because that's why a lot of people don't get accepted. That's why a lot of people end up, leaving, and people was getting kicked out of the church and stuff like that. It's because that was reinforced to them by the powers that be, that it wasn't acceptable. But if you actually go into the Bible, it says God is love. So if God is love, then why can't he not love everyone? So it's a bunch of things that is like, as Burnett was saying, that is I forgot the word. What is the word that I'm going to contradictory? Like, it's definitely hypocritical, because how can you say something that he's love, but then you don't love the person that's next to you? Mm-hmm. So
I think I find that interesting. I'm glad you brought the Bible up, because I think that's one of the biggest reasons why our community and our people have an issue with homosexuality, with this. I'm gonna be honest, with addressing white supremacy, is because that ideology that was handed to us, that was beaten into us, of this white Jesus, this white Messiah, and I find it so funny that we like to speak about liberation and like to speak about don't listen to white men's religion, but I'm like, but you practice it when you discriminate against me. Because if you actually look at the Hebrew Bible, and you have to actually be a Bible scholar. Anybody who's a Bible scholar, that means you read all sorts of the Bible, just not the King James Version, the one that was handed to you, but the one that became the original language of it, was the one that we have today, is the Hebrew one. And it doesn't talk about homosexuality. It's not even mentioned. It's the reason why in the Last Testament, Jesus even never talked about it. Never once mentioned it. It's not there. It actually speaks about pedophilia, but that's a whole different conversation. But for us to have, we'll say, growth, and have a community where we respect each other, we have to go to the root of it. And one issue is the church, and another issue of it is it's closeted. It's you look at this white Jesus as your savior, which came from your oppressor. And then you take their religion and you install it in your children, and then you wonder why you have HIV and all these other things running rampage, because these men are sleeping with other men on the low, but you don't talk about the women sleeping with other women on the low. And then there is no trust in the community, and that there creates a era, or this space where we don't like each other, where it's now created another space where we don't even communicate with each other, where we don't care for each other, have each other's back. And there's just lost communication. And I feel like one thing you have to uproot is that God said it's an abomination. I'm like, first of all, if you're actually getting your Bible, Jesus never once said it. And then if we want to talk about who said it, that was I believe it was Peter, who speaks about sexual immorality, but that wasn't Jesus, that was Peter. So therefore you have to actually read your Bible and actually understand who's saying what and what it's saying, when they were saying it, and what time they meant it. And then if you don't know anything about just, not even just religion, if you look at the world itself and about science and all that, you can find homosexual acts through the animal kingdom, through plants. I'm like, are you serious? If it was not meant to be here, it wouldn't be here. He says his word, there's nothing without his consent. So I find that very interesting, that he's a God of duality. There's up and there's down, there's left and there's right. If you want to go straight, there is gay. I mean, it's not going anywhere for a reason. So sorry, I just find it very interesting. But I think that to help with that, you have to actually stop with the whole thing that you're going to hell. Because I'm like, who told you that? Where does it say that in the Bible?
That's true. That is true, and that like you said, that's one of the major pillars. And I'm so fortunate to grow up in a church where everything and everyone was accepted. So I have a different outlook on those things, but I do see where in other situations, like they was telling people like, you can't be here if you gay, like, and my church was doors open. You come in however you feel, whatever you feel. And because at the end of the day, we all bleed the same blood. We're all black at the same days at the end of the day. So it's like, why would I discriminate against someone who A, looks like me, who A, goes through the same things I go through. We all like internally, we're all the same people. So it makes no sense for me to sit here and fight you when we should be fighting whomever, like in this world, fighting the people who's oppressing us. That's what makes us a stronger unit. And the fact of the matter is, people like to, and I'm going to date this back to Willie Lynch. If people know who Willie Lynch is, if you don't, go and do your Googles on Willie Lynch. To the separation of the Black community, I would say that it stemmed from that, because it's like, if you're lighter than me, I don't like you. You're darker than me, I don't like you. So it goes, and that's depicted in if you have more than me, I don't like you. It's stuff like that. So it's the fact of also, like he said, if you take the mind but keep the body, which is what they have done. So you have to be able to take your mind back to understand that if you are one following God, and if God is love, that you should love everyone.
Absolutely. I think that the best way to keep them like that, to keep a slave is simple, is separating by class, religion, and beliefs. And
absolutely,
literally, that's what you literally see today, is that people have their own views, their own class, their own beliefs, and I'm like, you just don't realize how much powerful you would be if you just stand together despite your beliefs, because the oppressors have one goal. And that's one thing that that upsets me as a person of color. It's when we can't even sit there and agree to disagree and move forward together. When it comes to white people or any other, ethnicity group, I can say this: they'll agree with a lie. They'll say Christopher Columbus discovered America, and everybody will say, "Yep." If it was black people, they'd be like, "No, Dr. King was great. No, it was Malcolm X," and we will not talk to each other. It will be a beef war. But other religions or ethnic groups, they have no problem saying, "This is a lie we're gonna go with." All right, everybody on the same page. We, on the other hand, will have like 6 different groups, and I'm like, why?
Yep.
Well, you guys mentioned the idea of love and, bringing up aspects of the Bible. And I want to actually bring it back to your personal journey. And society has already placed, we know that society has already placed these character traits or ideas of what it is to be a Black man. Whether you are gay or not gay, but even when you are gay, society has placed what that is kind of looks like, or what the idea of that looks like. And these are these identities almost. How have you guys coped with maybe not fitting into those identities and practicing self-love?
Oh, I think that was one that was like something for me more recently. It is something that I did without actually knowing that I did it. Because as a gay man, you assume, or you've been told, that you like makeup, or you undercover want to wear a wig, or you do certain things. And I one thing I started to do was stop categorizing myself and stop labeling myself and putting myself in a box. Because like the more boxes I put in, the more I make it, in my opinion, become reality. And I was like, I'm just Zaire. Simple. There's no other. That's the only way I can do it for my mental health. Because at one point it was stressful trying to navigate and figure out who you are. You're not. It's hard to articulate, to figure out who you are in today's space or on this earth with all these categories, not just from the white community, also from the Black community, of their idea of what a gay man is and what a gay man looks like. Like, I'll take Pride as an example. When I look at gay pride and see Pride, it does not represent me. Like, all I see is a whole bunch of newness, wigs, dancing. I'm all for it, but it doesn't represent me as a gay man. And so it doesn't represent me. I'm like, that's not me. And so I have peers and coworkers come to me like, are you into that? I'm like, not so much. They're like, what? I'm like, no, I don't wear high heels. I don't do drags on. I don't do wig on under. Have nothing against it. But one thing I stopped doing was, I was like, why do I have to check a box? Stop checking a box.
Mm-hmm. That's powerful.
I think That's a great point. And then I'm gonna add to that exact point. I think for me it was once I left behind the notion that I had to fit within a certain box based off of what I'm supposed to be as a black man or as a gay man or as a Puerto Rican man, whatever the hell the world decides they want to box me in. It's like I felt like you almost have to sort of let go of the identity that people say you're supposed to have in order for you to really have the free reign, the free space to really explore who you are. And I think mental health is a big, big, big part of it. It's something that I've struggled and still struggle with today because you're consistently expected to be boxed in certain characters, and for every person within our community, and even within Black people, there's all these identities that you're born with or sort of born against that people either try to box you in. I mean, it could range from people coming up to you and talking to you a certain way and expecting because you are a certain sexuality or a certain color that, we're just gonna come up to you and say, hey, you want to go meet a tea, this, that, and the third. Like, no, sometimes I don't feel like being like talking to somebody that way. Sometimes I don't feel like, going out to certain social functions. I mean, I even gotten because of your orientation, you're supposed to be at these events and do certain things. Well, you know what? That's just not who I am. And I feel like, when you're in a world where you constantly have all these identities and perceptions of where you're supposed to be, it gets really daunting because it's like you almost don't have the space to figure out who you are while also trying to navigate those boxes and things that people try to put you in. So I think it's almost, you kind of have to break the ceiling of who you're supposed to be and allow yourself to be who you are. And it's a very hard thing to do. And I think that there's a lot of people that struggle with this because there's been times where I've been denied certain opportunities because of who I am. Before I even had the opportunity to express who I was to that person that the opportunity was in the hands to. There's been times where I've been able to make certain friends because of who I am. And there's just all these things that you have to navigate with, and it's mentally exhausting to have to try to figure out who you are and to live in your own truth while dealing with all those things. So I think it's like you kind of have to break the mold of what people expect you to be, build a resilience, kind of like a thick skin. And it's sad that we have to do this in the world, but kind of just build a thick skin around who you are, your personality, and just living your truth. It ain't easy, but it's it's the card that people in our community unfortunately dealt with.
Mm-hmm.
It's liberating when you.
It is liberating.
Makeup. It's like you every day, or I feel you put on makeup and your eyelash, your eyeliner. You put all this makeup on to present yourself throughout, and then you get tired of it and be like, I don't want to do this no more. But like I'm still trying to figure out who I am. Therefore, I'm not about to sit here and put on this makeup to fit the mold of who you think I am. Mm-hmm. So I just don't do it. Some days I'm feminist. Some days I'm masculine. I'm like, baby, I don't know. I don't know why my voice fluctuates. Sometimes I sound masculine. Sometimes I sound like a girl. Like, I don't know, baby. I don't know how to...
And Burnett could speak to it. There's days where I'm, macho just, and there's days where sometimes I'll throw on a Whitney Houston wig and I'll recreate one. What's that song? One of those days. Because I'm just having one of those days.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God.
And that is, but then I realized, but that's who I am. Like, there's not a box for that. There's not a way to express. Like, that is just simply me. Mm-hmm. And so I just stopped catering to what your expectations of me are that you see on TV, because I do appreciate that gay men are now being seen on TV, but sometimes they don't represent me. I'm like, that's not me, but I appreciate that. So I just stopped doing it. I'm like, no, not so much. That's not me.
I think that you guys really dropped a lot of good gems. And Zaire, the whole idea of representation, I mean, that really, for me, was extremely powerful to know that even within the gay rights movement or just pride aspect, that there are aspects where you're like, nah, that ain't me. And it's powerful because it just shows you that you guys are not this singular entity just because of what you like or what you desire or what makes you happy. It doesn't make it singular. You're still your own person. Everybody is still individualized. And you know, I can just say that for me, this conversation is extremely meaningful because you guys have just brought so many different elements to this important topic. One last thing that I think would be a good takeaway. It's the same way how as a Black person we always say it's not our obligation or duty to educate other people from other groups on our history or our culture. Like, it's not our duty. I'm sure you maybe feel that same way when it comes to having to explain your sexual preference or your identity. But I do want to ask you guys, do you feel that there can be a benefit from more associations or friendships amongst your fellow Black brothers who are not homosexual? I mean, do you feel that there would be a more benefit to our community overall if that gap could just finally be bridged and you guys could like hang out and like, I mean, just there's not even the idea of, well, gay bar, straight bar. I mean, just hang out like without the labels. What do you guys think?
Absolutely. I think it's a benefit. I think for me personally, I'd rather you ask me, to be honest. It doesn't bother me. I'd rather you ask than make an assumption. I have no problem explaining what I don't like, what I do like, what I like to get into. Okay, that's a different tea. But I think that once you have conversation, you see that there's a lot of similarities. I have a coworker who's heterosexual, and he was like, "You're the first gay man I talked to, and we're actually really cool." And I'm like, you realize there is no difference. And then he's comfortable of saying things. He said that he probably wouldn't tell his straight partner because they probably look at him like, and I'm like, doesn't make you gay. I'm like, no. But I think that from those conversations or from having conversation, communication with each other, you might have more unity. You might have a sense of more understanding, and you realize like a lot of the stuff that you assume, you're like, oh, that's dumb. That I didn't know that's how you felt. I'm like, yeah, that's how I feel. And it's probably vice versa. Like, trust me, us gay men, we talk about straight men and the whole fetish thing about how we desire you. A lot of times, no, because we don't think you properly wash properly in the first place. That's like a real conversation we have. Like, we don't desire you like that.
It's often debated, child. It's often debated.
Justin.
A great point, because some of these men do not watch a certain
I would tell you, when they think that we all just want the thugs and hood, I'd be like, you on a corner every day wearing the same pair of drawers. I don't want you. I'm not even looking at you.
Your two baby mothers, I'm sorry. I don't want you when your Popeye's job. No, I don't want you with your bipolarness. It's okay. Your girl can have you. It's all cute. The woman can have you.
I don't using in and out the door. 1 minute you think you're gay, 1 minute you're not, and I got to be your beard. Like I don't want no one like that.
But me and Zay can go on and on about those types. But
baby, trust me, we can, because I'm not touching you. I'm like, you ain't got no job, no retirement plan. You got nothing. What you doing? Running the streets? Oh, you a hood? Oh, I'm good. I like some ties. I like some professional. That's what rouses me. Maybe just a pinch. Just pinching. Just a little pinch.
Okay. Now the people know if you want to hit Zaire up,
Oh, I am a late. I mean, if you, I'm joking. I'm joking.
But
you can find me at.
I mean, if you want to go, tell them how to find you.
The baby, I'm all right. The whole situation, I'm all right.
But I would definitely say thank you, Justin and Zaire, for coming on and discussing how your point of view in this. from me being a straight Black man, I'm definitely proud to have both of you as friends, to have fostered this relationship. And you know, we'll have conversations off air, but I just want everybody to know that I truly appreciate you too, because just it's all right. Like, it's okay for the listeners. It's okay to have friends that are not as identical as you, because you never know what doors might open. You never know what conversations you might be able to have. And I'm definitely appreciative and glad and happy that I'm able to have the friends that I have, and have have uncomfortable conversations for other people, because like I said, you never know what might happen because of this. So like I said, I definitely, and Justin knows this, I talk about Justin all the time, so that's the relationship that we have. Justin is, like, to me, like, he's like one of the bros. Like, I don't see sexuality when I speak to Justin. It's just like Justin's like is the guy friend. Like, he's like cool, like we can kick it. And even hanging out with Zaire is like the life of the party. Like, if you want to party and get drunk, call Zaire. Like, that is the that is the
drink. I'm not gonna turn out a drink now. All
that is the person you call. Because I remember we went to Houston and Zaire was like, I had the cup on the table. He's like, we don't waste alcohol out here. And I was like,
my kind of friend.
Damn, like, I gotta drive. He's like, you'll be fine.
Oh my God.
We don't waste on
gotta go
alcohol.
out, Zaire.
Let's go. We don't waste on alcohol. Period.
Drop.
Yeah, and we was lit that night.
Yeah.
So,
We were lit at the go kart.
Yeah.
But
all of it.
Like I said, I appreciate you guys. I love you guys. And you know, that's just my take on it.
Well, y'all already know I love you both, and I'm so happy that we were able to have you, Zaire. Thank you. I still am like so happy to know you're our first bi-coastal guest.
Yes.
The chance is expanding now. But you know, listen, I can't even imagine. I could never walk a day in your shoes because I just don't know. But I'm empathetic, and with the roles and labels, I guess, that I have, I can only try to understand and listen and be a listening ear and be an ally and advocate for just what's right. I mean, you know, and one thing about me, I just don't like ignorance. And that's why I think it was so important for me to do this episode with you guys, because I just think that there's not a lot of platforms or even places for people to get certain education in an insightful, informative way. I think this was a very phenomenal conversation, and I know that this will live on, because this was, I mean, yeah, we had a little few laughs here and there and it was funny, but like there was some real gems dropped. And honestly, like Quentin said, there's a lot of different things that people just don't have the access to when they grow up. And you guys kind of shed light on a lot of helpful things. So thank you for talking. I know this is not always an easy conversation or a comfortable one, but you guys did this so gracefully. So shout out to you guys, you know?
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. I kind of want to just add to what Burnett was saying, you know, the same way that we have to protect our Black kings and protect our Black queens, we got to protect our Black gay kings. Because at the end of the day, you know, women have a wonderful sisterhood amongst one another. They have a wonderful camaraderie. You know, I feel like as Black men, we need to bring back that sense of brotherhood. I mean, regardless of orientation, at the end of the day, you know, I am a fellow Black man, Zaire is a fellow Black man, Quentin is a fellow Black man. There's a sense of brotherhood that needs to be restored, renewed, and reinvigorated amongst us. And we need to do a better job of holding one another down and protecting ourselves, and really, you know, continue making spaces, because there's no reason why a Black gay man can't have the same success as a straight Black man. I mean, we're all Black people at the end of the day. So definitely protect your fellow Black kings, your fellow Black bros, regardless of orientation.
I agree, because so far it seems like we don't got no allies. I'm just gonna say it. I know I probably offend some people, but that's just how I feel.
It's the truth. It's hard out here. It's hard out here for a pimp.
It's a couple that speak up. I feel like it's just us. It's just black people. Like,
Yeah.
like seriously, we're still the only ones getting shot while sleeping in our apartments, or walking or driving.
It's and that could be a whole nother episode. It's really true, and it's sad. There's a lot of injustices that we face and that we're seeing, and it's getting to the point where it's so repetitive. I know a lot of people are desensitized to it, honestly.
Oh, I think it's purposely to desensitize it, because every time you look up, it's just kind of like, it's just like, oh, okay, another out today.
Yeah, another day. Mm-hmm.
What you gonna eat for dinner? Oh, okay. Yeah, the police officer, she only got 2 years, so she's gonna serve 24 months, even though she's a seasoned officer. But anyways, what you gonna have? What you wearing to that club tonight? It's becoming a norm, which is just sickening to me. It's like, if you look at it, we all each other got, like, your family does that. It's like, that's a real thing. Kind of like, we have to stick together. I'm like, because it seems like ain't nobody else gonna stand up for us sometimes.
Right.
But that's not normal, but that's a whole nother conversation, like you said. So thanks for having me on here.
Absolutely. So just to the viewers, thank you guys for listening. We'll look forward to seeing you guys in the next episode. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And we'll see you guys next time. Bye.
See you later.
Bye.